Hello, how's it going, everyone? Let's get started with this. Let me do the usual check if the audio is working. It seems so. Nice. So last week it didn't go well because I was not using my typical setup, but today I'm back with my big monitor. So I have my two monitors back on my desktop, so I can have OBS and streaming stuff on the left and code on the right. So let's get to work. So my idea for the last episode, and trying again today, is to prepare the next episodes of the ASP.NET Core series and finally tackle a problem we have in the current application that we didn't tackle yet, even though it makes the application not work correctly. Let me see. So let's see things going wrong. I'll just start the dependencies. In this case, it's just a Postgres database. Okay. Now let's start the application, or all the applications, health, group management, and the front end. Or the front end. I forgot. I need the front end. Okay, we have the front end running. We have all the projects running as well. So we have a clean database. So if we go here, test in the greatest password of all times, and it doesn't work. So we need to register as a new user. So I'll register as that. And I have problems with redirects and stuff. I'll take a look at that later. Okay, so we're back. If you've seen in the past how this works, I'm just going to go to the groups, and because I started with a clean database, I need to create a new group. So if I create a new group, test, because I love to write these names, and nothing happens because an error is occurring. So let's see the logs for the group management API. So over here, somewhere, so it's a 400, and the cause for this error is that the user does not exist. So if we go here to data group and we go to the group management database, users, we have nothing in here, but in the auth database, in here, we have the user that we created. But as you might expect, let me see if I have here in the, okay, So as for the architecture of the application, these are separate things. The auth service, the back for front, API, and whatnot. So they are separate services with each one has its own database. So when we create a client, a user, or when we register a user, the groups service has no idea that had happened. We could, instead of doing this, like create on the fly, grabbing the ID from the token, and that would work particularly for when we create a new user. But in any case, we need to have some kind of synchronization between the services, because let's imagine that the authentication service, the auth service, I call it auth because it handles authentication and whatever comes to mind. If the user removes itself, deletes its account, there should be a way to warn the other services. In this case, I only have the group service, but eventually we'll have more. I'm saying this for a while, and we are already almost in episode 40. But eventually we'll get there. So we need to have a way to synchronize between services. So my idea is to do like an event-driven integration that is popular in microservices architectures, where when one thing happens in a service, it can send events that other services, if they're interested, can be notified. If they're not, they can just ignore, but they just send events for things that happen. In this case, what we want is when the new user is registered, when the user is edited, probably, because might change the name or something like that, and if a user deletes its account. So when the group service can do whatever needs to be done, can create a new user, can modify something, can clean up the data from a user and leave just the data that regarding groups that other users are still using. So it won't delete all the data, but maybe delete the data for things that are exclusive for that user. So my idea to do that, imagine, just do a quick draw IO. My idea is just as we have right now. We have a group management. We have a auth, and each one has its own database. Could do something like this. So we have something like this. And my idea will be to integrate both in an asynchronous manner, instead of like auth having to know all the services and call them, or group management having to call auth. So using asynchronous communication is good for decoupling the services. So my idea is to have a event bus. Okay. To have an event bus. So when the group management, so when auth does something, So for example, if a new user is registered, it will just send an event to the event bus, and the group management service is interested in that event, will grab it and store in its database that information to be used. So we're going to implement this, probably or certainly not all today just a bit, because we'll have several steps. So the first thing we need to do is in the interactions with the auth service, create the infrastructure to convert these actions into events. And this is the first tricky part. So let me stop all of this, because we already saw everything in action. So let's see where in the register somewhere this is the register code. Remember, most of this code is from the ASP.NET Core identity template. I left most as it was, try to avoid touching it, but it probably could use some adjustments. And this is me hammering stuff, don't remember why. Yeah, I'm saying that the first user is an admin just because of reasons. Don't even remember why, but I can probably go to an older episode and I explain myself why I did this. Okay, so register is here. So user manager, create a sync. So probably our first idea would be to go here and just call code to send event. Right? Just grab some water. But this has a problem. And that's why with this problem I won't do it this way. As we know, so this will create a new user in the database, and then we would have some code here that would, let's imagine that we have something like a publish Let's imagine we have something like this. Now, the problem is, imagine the server crashes here. So if this happens, what will happen with this? We'll have a new user in the auth service, but we didn't publish an event. So the other services will not know this and can't prepare for that. And because we don't have this information, there's a new user in the database. We don't know, we have a list of users in the database, we don't know which are new, ones are not in some place, whatever. Sure, we could do some like sync procedures, like let me see if there are users here that are not here and stuff like that. But those are probably not ideal. So what we want to try to ensure that this happens is we'll implement something that's called the outbox pattern. Outbox pattern. All the sites should have dark mode. So when we insert something, in our case, when we create a user, we want to In this case, because it's a relational database, if it was a document database, it would be different and probably harder. But at least in a relational database, it's kind of easy. So we want to, inside the same transaction, insert the new user into the users table and register in a table called outbox or whatever we want. And in there we will register that we have an event to send. And then eventually we can have like a background service, something like that, that reads the outbox table and publishes the event to the message broker, event bus, call it whatever you want. Sorry. So this is what we are going to implement. Now, normally we have multiple ways to implement this. And in this case, we also have, but we have some specifics to take into consideration. Because if we controlled all the code in the application, we could do it in more ways. So we can, for instance, when we create the user, immediately put an event somewhere that in the future will grab it and insert it in the table. In this case, because part of the code is not controlled directly by the application because it's ASP.NET Core identity. So this create a sync method. This is not mine. This is from identity. So what I'm going to do is do a hack. Not really a hack, but kinda. Because even though all this code is from ASP.NET Core identity, we have control over part of it because we provide it with a database context. This one, if you remember, if I go to somewhere here, when we are configuring identity, we tell it what is that we want to use entity framework and what is the DB context to use. So in here, we have a DB context that right now only inherits from identity DB context, but we can do stuff. So my idea of a hack is to override save changes and detect when a new user is created or is edited or removed and whatnot. And then when we detect that, we can create a new entity, which is an event, and insert it in the database, or better yet, put, in this case, entity framework. So we just add a new instance to the DB set. And when we actually call save changes in the base, we will have, it will be a single transaction. So we are guaranteed that we insert the user at the same time as we insert the event in the outbox. So in that case, as it's in the same transaction, we are sure that we won't lose an event because it will be persisted, and eventually we'll try to send it. When we do, we can remove it from the outbox. Are you following? No, not really. Interrupt me if I say something stupid or that it's hard to understand. So otherwise, I'll just keep doing stuff. So as I'll be doing things in steps. We'll start doing this every all in here, and then in the future we'll extract stuff. So, but let's start with seeing things in action. So, public override save changes async. There's a bunch of save changes overloads. Let's start with the one I normally use. So var result We'll store this here. So what we can do here is detect the user changes and create events, and in here we can return result. In here we will probably notify the background service that there are events to publish. We can also just schedule, and the publisher would do that, but if we do it this way it's faster. As soon as we commit the changes, we can send the information. And I'm not going to do this right now, probably, but if you recall, if I remove this code, remember that when succeeded so it generated a mail confirmation and stuff like that. So imagine the same thing going here. If it fails, we'll never send the email. So we could do this also the same way. So publish an event and eventually send an email, stuff like that. But for now, let's just do what we were trying to. So I'll start with messy code. We clean it up later. So what we want is to check if the better yet, let me just remember. We could do something like this: entries, user, in this case playball user, and let's see what we can find out here. The user, we have the actual entity, we also have the state. So if the state is added, we could say that, let's imagine we could grab the added users and we can map any added user to a user registered event. We could also modify users and user updated event, and you see the rest. Deleted users, we could do something like this. In this case, modified would be modified, and we can do some extra things. Let's imagine if the user modified the password, we don't want to send an event because it's not relevant, I think. User deleted. We could do some extra things. Or better yet, I'm doing select, but I should be doing where. So this way, we'll grab this. So let's start by just checking that this works as we expect. Another. Let's see if this works as expected or will be a surprise. And of course, I can only do this kind of hack because I know that the implementation of this create async will eventually call the database context and insert the user and save changes. So I have some knowledge of what's going on inside otherwise. So let's see. Auth. We'll get back here. So let's go to count. And let's say test1. Save. So hopefully we have a log. If we don't have a log, then we need to debug. I think we need to debug. What did I call the thing? Oh, it's here. No need to debug. Okay, nice. If we log out and create a new account, let's say so many logs. Register. Claims and stuff. User updated. You're telling me It's here. Why is then user updated? Ah, okay. That's why we need to do a filter, because this user updated is called probably when sending the email, generate email confirmation. Probably this code, yeah. This code will update the user or something like that to generate the code and store that in the database. And that's why the modified is called again. And then I'm doing get claims and stuff. So, okay. So the registered works well because we just want to, where am I? Right here. To detect that the user was added, this is good enough. To detect that the user was changed, this is not good enough, because if we change the password, we change stuff. Let's see what the table contains. So the table contains ID, username, email, normalized email, email confirmed, password hash, security stamp, concurrency stamp, and a lot of other things. Okay, so we don't want to send an event for all this. We just want to send events when a user is updated with data that is relevant to other services. And probably we don't want to send every time something that only the auth service requires to know. So in here we should do this and check, for instance, and u.entity there was something here. Yeah, original values, something like check username. Yeah. What does it get value get? It's the name. I don't want to use the name. I'll use the name for now, just to see things working. And what did I want to do? Playable user. Name of playable user dot email. No, username. So we'll check if the username what's your pain? Okay, this is, yep. So this is hideous, but we are just testing stuff. Eventually we will move this out of here. So for now we will assume that the only thing that the other services need to know about a user is the username and the ID, of course, but the ID won't change. Eventually this might change, but we'll simplify this for now. So now if we go Let's create another user to make sure that doesn't happen again. And let me clean the logs. Better yet, need to restart the application. Account, and we register a new user. And now if we search for this, I think we should not see it. Correct. But we have one registered. We have no updated. But if I change this, we should now have one of these. We don't, really? No, we have. Okay, now it's making sense. And now I was going to delete it, but I haven't put the options to delete it, so we can't. But let's assume no. What's the personal data? Okay, so this is the information that's registered. Okay, so we can't delete it, but let's assume that part will work spectacularly. So we did the hacky part, which is detect that we have changes, so then we can create events for them. Making sense so far? I know maybe it's a bit hacky, but the alternatives are not great, I think. So it's a bit a matter of pick your poison. The other way, I was thinking I could do this without doing this kind of inference here, would be, for instance, in here in the register, when we do the create async, we could add the event to the DB context and put a transaction like but this doesn't seem particularly better. So I was thinking that this inference of changes is maybe easier, because as you saw, the code, it's hideous, but it's not hard. We'll then extract this into some classes like event detection handler, or call it whatever, and then we'll implement one handler for each kind of event. So this seems easy to implement and does the job, so all good. If no one says anything, I just assume it's all good. So over here in the data, I still need to think about the structure, but let's go with something like this here. Events. Start with something like hello. I dos Anis. I'm probably butchering your name. Sorry. Base auth event. Make it abstract. Then I'll put some thing in there, but right now add new class and we'll call it yes. I upload the stream like 1 day or two after I put the stream in there. It's youtube.com/codingmilitia. There's probably a link somewhere in the channel, I think. So I'll call it user registered event. The event part is a bit redundant, but I'll keep it for now. Base Yep, that's it. Thanks, Bruno. How you folks prefer? Base auth event or auth event base? I don't know. I don't like either. I'll see that later. So, user registered. User registered. Newbie.NET Core. This stream today at least is not great for newbies, I think, but can probably learn something. But I have a series on the YouTube channel, the Coding Militia, which starts simpler and eventually goes more complex. And there is also, for instance, Jeff Fritz, which streams here on Twitch as well. Also has a bunch of things, and I think he was going to do this today, but postponed ASP.NET Core workshop. I think he'll probably do next week or something like that, where I think he will spend the day showing ASP.NET Core. That's probably good for starting to learn .NET Core. So over here in the base auth event, I want an ID. So all events need an ID. More. I'll put the daytime because I'm not worried with time zones and stuff. I should, but that's probably a problem for later. Daytime, now called occurred at okay. And there are more YouTube channels which I think do a better job than mine in getting started, because I try to simplify, but then I over-engineer a lot. So I'm terrible. But I think is Tim Corey. I think Tim Corey's channel is great to learn, to start learning, and Jeff Fritz streams are also good. And also the YouTube channel for .NET, they started to put more content there. Let me just check one thing here. they have put a ton. Some time ago there weren't as many playlists, but now they have a lot. So for getting started, they're probably good, and then continue investigating. And I hope some of my videos or posts are helpful, but I know that sometimes I just go overboard. Okay, so back in here in the code, for the base auth event, probably the ID and occur that are enough. More ideas? Anyone? And then over here, so I was thinking about something like this. Event version. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, probably not needed right now, but it makes sense in the future. So I'll put a comment here. Makes sense because the events may change in a bit, but yeah. So, but ID and occur that seem like the basics, right? And then user registered, we just need the user ID and the username, and we can just copy stuff. Should have the reverse updated. And for the delete, in fact, now that I'm thinking, is it better called user updated or account? It's the same. Whatever. My doubt here is that my idea, don't know if it makes a ton of sense, but my idea is that we have this back here. We have this health service, and we have the group management, and we will have eventually more. And I was thinking, tell me if it makes sense or not, to eventually have something that's actually user. And in this service is where we will have settings and stuff like that. So the auth would be just for authentication. We go there, authenticate with the email and password and nothing else. And we would have a user service where we could set preferences like notification preferences and stuff like that. Don't know if it makes sense. And in that case, we would have like the events from this one would be like account events, and this one would have events like actually user events. So for instance, even though the username, that's the same as the email, comes from here, in here would be where the user would set the actual name and maybe a nickname and stuff like that, and keep the auth service just auth. Does it make sense, this separation, or I'm overcomplicating as usual? That's what I do. But yeah, this is just the preparation for the episode, so I can think about it more, and people can give input when they feel like it. So I'll keep it for now like this. So deleted user just needs the ID, so the services know, well, this user is gone. Registered is the user ID and the username because it's a new user. And updated also user ID and the username because the username might have changed. Okay. And they all come from here. So what we want, we will create the outbox table. I'm just thinking. Okay. I'll create a class which will be outbox message event. I'll call it outbox message. If you have better ideas for names, please help me, because I'm terrible at names. And in the outbox, I'll just put the long ID. Event ID. Not really. It can, but I don't think it needs to match the event ID. It's just, if you recall, the event ID is a GUID, and in this case I'll just put a long auto increment because we don't really care, I think, because in this case we just want to put the thing in there. This is probably a bit redundant, but I'll put it here anyways. We just turn on the light. Okay, I think the outbox just needs this. So an ID, because the table needs an ID. I created that, which maybe we'll use is processed. It can be an is processed, but I was thinking about just deleting it. Don't know if there's value in keeping all if the background job goes down. What do you mean? What I was thinking was, we have like the background job. It gets the outbox messages, like a bunch of them, sends them to the event bus, and deletes the messages from the database. Should look to some column if it's processed, and deleting the entry is not enough. I know people love to keep things around, but I like cleaning up the database. If it's to delete, it's to delete. Soft delete is only useful sometimes. Because what I was assuming was, as soon as the message was processed and put in the queue or the event bus or whatever, we'll be using Kafka, but that's irrelevant. As soon as I put it there, I'm assuming it's done. So marking is processed or just deleting is the same. Because I'm assuming the event bus is, as when I put the message there, it's consistent. So that's why I wasn't putting a processed flag. I'm just going to kill it from the table instead of having the table growing. Just kill it. Will publish message to your what service? My idea here is, after doing all of this and creating, the auth service, it's where we are, is detecting the changes, will create the entries to the table. That's the models we are now creating. After save changes, so in here, or better yet, in this line, it will save the user and save the event to the outbox. Then my idea was, in here, we just notify the background service saying, you have things to process, go read the database. That was my idea. And then the service wakes up and goes and does its thing. And in that service, that background service will read from the database, publish to Kafka, and delete from the database after it's published to Kafka and we know that it's there. Making sense? Or are you thinking about something else? But yeah, most of the time, probably it's preferred is processed, and that's probably where you're coming from, but I like to keep things clean. Oh yeah, hard delete. If there are things that are useful, we can soft delete and then have a process that deletes things like older than a week or something like that. But besides that, I think most of the times just hard delete, because I hate those services that we ask, I want you to delete all of my data, but then they have all your data the same. So if I don't like that, I don't want to do the same. I think this table is a different subject, but yeah, maybe in something more we could soft delete and delete it a week later, but this is we're playing around, so I'll just delete. Don't want things to pile up on the drive. So back here, what I was doing. Outbox message, okay. And the outbox message, I think this is enough. ID, created that, stuff. Let me just do one thing, because I'm that annoying, or better yet, private. So doing it like this because I'm annoying and I want to avoid setters as much as possible. In here I let it like this just to simplify the serialization, because I'm going to create this as, what's it called? This is a JSON column. We are using Postgres, so we will serialize the base auth event as JSON into a column in Postgres. So let me see, infrastructure, data, new directory, configurations, and I never know what it's called. I need this stuff. Outbox message. Okay, so let's configure this thing. We want ID. And we need to create that property. I've been playing around with similar stuff. And I need this part. I will explain it in a bit. Let me just copy paste like a boss. At least I'm copy pasting for myself, so not that bad. And this is okay. So what I'm doing here, configuring the property as a JSON-B, that's a type from Postgres, and I'm using the converter. If I didn't put this here, NPG SQL knows how to serialize this to JSON, and it uses system text JSON, I think. But it doesn't handle the hierarchy, and we created a hierarchy. So we have a base auth event and all the others. So I'm overriding what is already done and creating a conversion using JSON.NET, just to be simple. Because JSON.NET does this out of the box, supports hierarchies, we just need to do something like this, and then JSON.NET will write a property that says what is the type of the field, so it will be able to deserialize the thing. We could also implement stuff with the system text JSON, but it would be more work. So right now, this is good enough. In the future, we can play a bit around. Okay, so, and this is really a JSON type in Postgres. We can even do queries that go there and check for things directly in the JSON. So it's cool. No, it's not just a string that happens to be JSON, it's actually JSON. And SQL Server also supports it. So, okay, I think that's it here. Now I need to configure, I don't remember where. Yes, need this. On model creating. We apply the thing. Okay, it's all good. Making sense? It's not super hard, but it's a bit weird. And this is just because it makes no real sense for us to be creating tables to support all the types of events that we might have. It's easier to just put the event in JSON and then send to the message broker. So what we want to do is, let's get back here, outbox, no, I'm lost, DB context. And we want to go DB context and put prop DB set of outbox message. Outbox messages. So now we could do something like where select what did I call it? Can new outbox message. Let me check. Now that I'm seeing this. You know the ID here because it's auto-generated. I'll do this. Just doing it like this. Probably we should have a service to inject and get the clock so we can unit test and stuff, but let's go with the basics and the event. So we want a new user registered event. I'm using the properties right now, but probably do change this. New with in here we want u dot entity dot id. Oh, it's a string. I was thinking it was a GUID. I'm pretty sure it's a GUID, but they put a string just to make it updated. delete it. What else? Okay, so we have the added users. Registered events. Let's delete this part. Start to clean up things. And use select similar. This line is killing me, but I will ignore it for now. User updated event. And it's the same. And in this one, we should have an error, deleted. This can go down. This is also annoying me, so I'm just going to put it here for now. Whoops. Warn me if I do something stupid, please. Because I do something stupid. Okay. Okay, so updated user events and deleted user events. We want to outbox messages dot add events add range. Anyone knows if I need to check if this is empty or not? Or can I just do this like this? I'm not sure. But we'll find out. It will throw if we do. So let's, it's working. How is your confidence that this will work at the first try? I'm pretty sure it will blow up, but register as a new user. Test 4? No. Yep. Collection was modified. What? I expected something strange, not this one. Collection was modified is really weird. So let's delete these. Outbox messages. Idiot. Need to run the migrations. Anyone that knows the migrations by heart? To go to the sheets, that is the blog. Both. To create this, but I need something more. Native migrations help. Need to change the output there because I have. So it's /infrastructure/data. Pretty sure I'll fail. No project work. Name. Yeah. What about now? More than 1 dB context, okay. I was thinking about that. And the dB context is out. Do you really need to send output? I think so, because it's not on the default location. the default location is at the root, and I put it in infrastructure data, so I think so. I can try without it, but okay. And always, I never get it right. I'll just try without it, just for us to check. But I'm pretty sure it will put it in the wrong place. Or maybe it's smarter now. It's smarter now. Nice to know. So maybe it was just the first time that I needed to do it. Nice to know. Thanks, Bruno. So now we have the migrations. They will run on application start because we are in a dev environment and I configured that. So let's see. When we get this working, I'll wrap it up. It's almost 1 hour and a half. Just wanted to see if this works. Okay. So now we should have somewhere. What did I do? It's not the first time that I have this problem with data grip. Okay, outbox messages. So if we go here, we have a message. Let me copy this, put it in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we have the ID, that's that GUID. We have the type, which is that thing that I put there in the JSON configuration, the JSON serializer settings. So this is just for us to be able to deserialize this from the database. The user ID, which is a string, but it's really a GUID. A username, and the time it occurred. Okay. So now, finally, we have the event in the outbox. So when we create, we modify, so we can go and let's see, test 4, T4, save. We go here. Now we have to, and this is of type user updated, and this is of type user registered. So, like I said at the beginning, we have a bunch of steps, and this is just the steps. What the hell? That's not really interesting message. So this is a bunch of steps for the to implement this. This is the first step. Put it in the outbox. Now in the next week, hopefully, the next step will be to read from the outbox and put it in the message broker. And then eventually implement the rest. So I think I'll wrap it up for today. Any questions, suggestions, insults? No, insults, it's better not. everything that I did is clear or makes sense, or is just stupid. A video in VS Code and VS Setup. Also, I don't have any video, but what kind of setup? And just they work together. I don't think they're supposed to work together. You use VS Code for one thing and VS for other, or maybe for the same, but not really together. And just a note, this that I'm using here is not Visual Studio. It's JetBrains Rider. I use Visual Studio during the day at work, so when I'm playing around I use JetBrains Rider just to use something different. It's kind of cool. And works on Mac and Linux, so it's nice. Visual Studio is only Windows, and on Linux and on Mac it's a different version. And older vids, I have older videos, but I don't think I ever go into the details of the IDE. Yes, I use VS Code for the front end. Yeah, for the Vue application I use VS Code, but they never interact. And one thing that I did, I know it's different from many do. What many do is when they have like the single page application and the server, they put the client, the JavaScript files and all of that in the ASP.NET application, and serve it from there. But in this project I did it differently, so it's really separated. Don't know if it's over here. Is it over here? Yeah. So I've created a back for front. So this is a ASP.NET server API and the single page application host. Basically what I've done, and I go through that in the episode regarding Docker. And basically what I did was copy the JavaScript and HTML and all of that files into a Nginx server, so it's really independent. And then I have this reverse proxy, which when it's an API request forwards to the back for front, but when it is not an API request forwards to the single page application, because I wanted really to have the things separate. And like you see, I'm starting the application over here. These applications, I'm starting the auth, group management, and back for front. But here in the console, I started the Vue application. But you can use them together. I just wanted to separate because if we imagine a team that splits the front end work from the back end work, maybe the front end team just wants to run in their front end part and don't worry about that, so they don't need to be coupled. If it's a full stack team, it's another thing, but yeah, this is just preference. We could serve the static files from the ASP.NET application. Working in TypeScript with VS and VS Code. I don't think I ever used TypeScript in VS, but in VS Code it's supposed to be, and I worked with Angular in the past. And TypeScript works well in VS Code. Particularly if you use Angular, because it's all tied together. In Vue I had it's not problems, it's just because Vue wasn't thought initially to use it, so it's a bit different. But for example, Angular, it's all together. Even Angular is written in TypeScript. But yeah, I have older videos. Save on compile. Save on compile? What is that? I didn't really do any setup. I just started coding. But compile and save. Detect changes. Yeah, this is automagic. I didn't set up anything in TypeScript because let me just stop this. Let me check. So I'll go here. I'll just make a change just because of reasons. This that happened, it detected a change, but I didn't configure anything in VS Code. This is just the view. In this case, is view. If you used, I don't know what you are using in the front end, but for instance, Angular also has Angular CLI, and React I never used, but it's probably also have a common line interface. But this, when I do this npm run serve, the thing is already pre-configured by. If I go here, let me check. I didn't even do anything here because Vue configured this automatically when I created the project, so I didn't worry about that. Otherwise, I would need to worry about Webpack and stuff, and yeah. So npm run serve just calls Vue CLI service serve. So these are things that Vue does by itself. Great. And Angular also has that. If you are configuring everything yourself, it's harder. Yeah. But if you're using something like this, it's easier out of the box. And that's one of the reasons I went with Vue. I wanted to focus more on the back end and just do the front end that I needed to do because I'm more interested in that. But yeah, that's not I didn't configure anything in VS Code. So VS Code is just, I use it to edit stuff, and the rest is working here. Install some extensions, like, I don't know, too many extensions. Like, yeah, Vue is nice. Don't know if it's the best one. I think Angular is more enterprisey. It's what seems to be the case. React is the most used. Vue, it seemed simple enough for me to focus on the other things and just build a simple front end, and it's working well enough. And my prior knowledge of Angular translated well enough to Vue. And I think Svelte is also something that's being talked about right now, but can I edit what Vue? Yeah, Vue, that's also interesting. I'm doing using Vue to build a single page application, but one thing that people like about Vue is that you don't need to do a single page application, because like Angular is a full framework, so you need to create a whole project with Angular. Maybe there's some changes now with web components and stuff like that. Though I haven't really kept up. But Vue, you can just, for instance, just reference a CDN in your page and just use it to build something in that page. You don't need to do a single page application. So you can do as I did, which is use the Vue CLI and build everything, or you can just use Vue like it was jQuery. So that's one of the things people like. So they can start using Vue a bit and eventually migrate and do everything in Vue. They call it progressive. I don't know. But yeah, you can go full blown or just a bit. How do you work Razor Pages? A good question. Never tried it. One time I saw, but it wasn't used Razor Pages. But yeah, for that it's probably doesn't integrate that well. You're right. What I saw was really, it was a demo by Damian Edwards and David Fowler from the ASP.NET Core team, and they were showing off Signal R. And instead of building everything, they just did like a index.html, put the thing in there, not Blazor. It was before Blazor was a thing. It was just Signal R and put Vue in there, and they showed Signal R working and just included Vue in that page. So with Razor Pages, yeah, you can use it, so you can import that and create, but then the thing is, Razor Pages is more to, I don't know. If you use for AJAX request, it will work well. But if you want to integrate the forms with Razor Pages and stuff like that, it's probably harder. Don't know. Never tried it. I just know people like it for that, but I went full blown single page application because reasons. And the name of the series is Overkill, so I need to make the name make sense. But I'm far from the best one to be asked about front-end stuff. I do the basics and okay, maybe a bit more than the basics, but I normally don't focus that much on things, on front-end stuff. I think, yeah, for this it's there. Anything else? No problem, Rusty. So if it's all good, I'll wrap up and hope to see you in the next week. Hopefully everything still works and all of that. It would be great if we were not locked at home still, but it's probably to stay for a bit more. Thanks everyone. Have a nice weekend and stay safe. See yous.